Hi everyone, I'm Helen Vivienne Fletcher. I'm an author from Wellington, and this is my beautiful assistance dog, Bindi. Now I'm going to be reading today from my book, Familiars and Foes. Familiars and Foes was part of the 2020 lockdown project, Witchy Fiction. We, a group of authors, all got together and decided to write cosily magical witchy fiction stories set in New Zealand. And when I heard about the project, I knew that I wanted to write a story about a witch with an assistance dog who also turned out to be a familiar. You can probably see where I got my inspiration, both from the cover and from the dog in front of me. So I'm going to read a little from the first chapter of Familiars and Foes. Kate Shepherd was walking down Molesworth Street towards Adeline, or perhaps floating towards her would be more accurate. The matriarch of New Zealand democracy's feet didn't quite touch the ground as her transparent figure made its way past her namesake apartments. The ghost looked up, meeting Adeline's eye. Her Gibson girl hairstyle and high-necked blouse matched the image Adeline knew from the $10 note. But there was something different in the spirit's expression, a nervousness. Adeline held her breath, frozen for a moment. Then she blinked, and the ghost disappeared. Adeline stared into the space where she had been. It wasn't the first time Adeline had seen the suffragette, of course, nor was Kate the only apparition Adeline had seen that day. Catherine Mansfield had made her way down Tinnacorry Road past Adeline's house that morning. She presumed the author was on her way to the museum which preserved her childhood home, but she never made it. She always disappeared into nothing, a few metres before the historic places sign. Adeline had always seen ghosts, or whatever it was they were. She was 10 before she realised other people didn't. This was the first time a spirit had made eye contact, though, which made Adeline a little uneasy. Sleep deprivation, she told herself. She always saw more ghosts when she was tired. She made a mental note to turn off the TV early tonight, no matter how much just one more episode called her name. Coco nudged Adeline's hand with his nose, and she shook her head, doing her best to clear away the thoughts of spirits. She glanced down at Coco, and he stared back at her, his eyes solemn while he was in work mode. She made her way slowly up the road to the shop, Coco looking up at her every so often to check she was okay. She smiled back at him, loving seeing his sweet, attentive face peering up at her. "Good boy," she said, and his tail wagged again. She grabbed the few things she needed for dinner, not in the mood for a big shop. She ignored the stares of the other customers. Coco, in his assistance dog vest, always drew attention, but his training taught him to ignore it all. Adeline mostly ignored it too. There were some days, like today, where she just didn't have the energy for dealing with other people. She hoped the stares didn't turn into evasive questions. Adeline saw a flicker of something misty moving at the end of an aisle and turned away, no keener to deal with ghosts than with people. But Coco knew her routine. Vegetable section, milk, baking aisle, pet food, his favourite, and then bread. He stared at her and gently pulled towards the bakery, clearly thinking she was confused. Adeline sighed. He was right, she was being silly. She needed bread, and the ghosts had never caused her harm. In fact, they usually didn't pay her any attention whatsoever, simply floating nearby, going about their business. She wondered if they were following the routines they'd had in life, too. Still doing the weekly shop, despite no longer being able to eat the food. If so, she thought she'd better start doing something less mundane with her life immediately. Coco trotted happily towards the bread, pleased he'd convinced her to correct her path. The figure became clearer as they got closer. He was young, an adult from the style of his suit and the cravat at his neck. Strangely, it made him look even younger and out of place, like a teenager forced into formal wear for a wedding, only playing at being a grown-up. Adeline hesitated. He was stepping backwards and forwards as if confused, his lips moving silently. This was unusual. Ghosts often had a set path that they followed, but she'd never seen one pacing like this. She glanced down at Coco. He didn't seem worried, so she continued forward, picking up her loaf of bread. "I don't know. I just don't know." Adeline froze. She didn't turn around, but she knew there were no other shoppers close by. Coco's ears were pricked, having heard it too. She'd not heard a spirit speak before. It's not the same. None of it's the same. The voice was whispery, and Adeline felt the chilling sensation of cold breath on the back of her neck. What do you want? She choked out. The figure behind her gasped. Adeline turned around, and the ghost's eyes widened, staring straight into Adeline's. They were face to face, close enough that Adeline could see he was made up of swirling smoke-like strands, just hinting at the outline of skin and clothes. You can hear me? He asked. Adeline frowned. The ghost seemed just as shocked as she was. His irises moved, twirling pools of grey and white. She could see fear in those eyes. Not just fear, terror. What is it? What's wrong? She asked him. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but the ghost wasn't listening. His gaze drifted away from her, seeming to stare at something just beside her. Adeline resisted the urge to turn and look, but goosebumps rose on that side of her neck, as if a cold finger was trailing down her skin. The figure became less clear, fading slowly into smoke and dissipating. All right, so that's the part of the first chapter of Familiars and Foes by me, Helen Vivienne Fletcher. Thanks so much for joining me, and it looks like Bindy's gone to sleep, so I might just finish that one there. See you later.